What's up, gang? In this video, I want to break down how I learned to solo personally over this track that's in 13/16 that just came out on the Meinl YouTube page. So it's called Shed Track from Hell, and it's this really quick, moving, weird thing that was really hard to learn to solo over, and it felt like I kind of had to build vocabulary from the ground up. So I want to try to accomplish two goals in this video. One, I'm going to describe my process that I went through genuinely to get ready for that video shoot. And second, this process will be generally, you can sort of extract it and it will be generally useful when you want to develop some freedom in any odd time where your typical vocabulary doesn't work very well. So here's what this loop sounds like. And I wrote the two performance pieces that I do to music that Meinl has put out now. There's this one and there's one called Ode to Friends. And these I wrote with a friend named Elisha, and he came in here, we were jamming, he has a synth, and in this particular 13/16 track, this was like an arpeggio, like a loop that he had created earlier and saved, and he was like, we were just messing around with ideas, and he was like, check this out. And he played it, it sounds like this. And at first I was just trying to figure out, like, what time signature are we in? Where is the downbeat? It could be in several different places. And eventually we started locking into a groove, and he had the idea. He was actually like, dude, I was kind of shedding over it while we were just chilling, and he was like, honestly, if you just shedded over this, it'd be kind of lit. And so that's what planted the idea. And then I started getting to work. And honestly, it was hard enough in the beginning that I was like, I don't know if I can pull this off. This sounds like a bad idea right now. But I started having a few light bulb moments that I'll share with you and a few breakthroughs. And ultimately, the process went pretty well. I ended up doing I think 6 takes of this little guy, which is fewer than I thought I would need to do. Anyways, let's jump into it. So that's what it sounds like. I'm getting a little high tech on us here. I've got my iPad because it's going to help a lot to write out what this is and think about how it's broken up and other ways we can break it up. So here's what it looks like. Let me write it out. So we're in 13/16. And when we listen to this, right, so my first process as I'm hearing this for the first time, here's how it struck me. An important note was this felt like a little bit of a backbeat. And the way that I heard this initially was boom, that's the downbeat. So there's no right or wrong way to break this up, and you might hear it differently. Alicia, the keyboard player, actually hears the do-do-do-do-doom as the one bu-do-do-do-doom. This is just where I heard it. And what this looks like on paper, if I write it like this, is this. Now, notating something like this is a little odd, and there are a lot of options you could exercise, but this is how I think makes the most sense to write it. I'm going to put the 7 up here, not because it's a septuplet. I'm not thinking of it that way. I'm basically thinking of 16th notes, right? We're in 13/16. So these aren't septuplets and a sextuplet. These are just 7 16th notes and 6 16th notes. At least that's how I'm understanding it. So just to take a moment to think about notation here. If you look at the first bit here, right? Each one of these is an 8th note. An 8th note is 2 16th notes, right? So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 is a group of 7 plus a group of 6. This gives us 13. This little dot here, right? This little line here, that is what makes it a 16th note. So this last stem, this one, is a 16th note, and you can tell because it has that thing there, which means that you get 7, there's no 8 between these, right? So then you're straight on to do, dot, dot. So let me do it with a different color. Boom, ba, ba, boom, ba, right? There's no space between those like there are with the other ones. So then we look at the second half, and we have this. If we just isolate it, is a little easier to think about. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? 1 space 3, 4, 5, 6. So again, if you're trying to understand notation better, this is a great opportunity to just look at where there are two lines, like these up here, attached to the stem, and where there is one line. In this case, where there are two lines, every single one of those gets a count. Where there is one line, like this one, and like all of these, those all get 2 counts because they're eighth notes, so they get 2 16th notes. So if we dot in all of the counts here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So to me, this is the accent that stands out. And everything for me is based around that being a sort of backbeat type of thing. Now that we kind of have it notated, we understand the notation, we kind of understand the counting and what's going on here, let me just play for a second so you can let this melody sink in with a deeper understanding now. So that's what it sort of feels like to play along with this a little bit. So you can hear that sort of downbeat and the backbeat that I'm emphasizing. Now, one of the major light bulb moments for me up front, which helped open up more vocabulary, but sort of deepen my understanding of the potential around this, was a second way of feeling this. It's basically a second way of dividing it. So let me actually just sing along with this and notice how different these two things feel. So, and in the track, we end up moving between these very intentionally. Here's the first feel. Here's the other one. So one of them, the first one, well, the second one feels like triplets a little bit, and here's why. It's actually, I think this is extremely interesting. So the first one, I'm basically feeling like we've already written out. The second one, what we basically do is we start to feel triplets, because think of this. We're in 13/16. If we were in triplet 4/4, like just playing like a shuffle, we would have 12 triplets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's only one more, 13. So that means we can feel triplets, but we need to add one really random note somewhere. And the way that this happens to work here is what we can do. I'll do it in green. We can do, okay, there's, sorry, let me do that more accurately here. There's 4. And then we have 3, 3, 3. And this is why it starts to feel like doom 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 boom ba da 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 doom doom 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 right? And if I notate it like that, what it ends up looking like is this. This is the same, right? 2 eighth notes in a row. But then we can think in triplets. We can go like this, and that's a triplet. Da 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 da. And then we have ba, da, 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 da. Okay, so now notice that instead of, right, these last 4 16th notes here, they're not da, 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 da. They're da-ga-ga-ga, da-ga-ga-ga. Right, down here, they're da-ga-ga-ga. So that changes the feel majorly. And it's really this part at the end. This, in my mind, is what triggers the change. So when I'm looping in the first way, I go do 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 da da ga da ga do 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 da 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 ga 1 2 1 1. So boom do do go 1 2 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then when I want to flip to the other one, that's the moment where I go boom, ba, da, do, da, da, ga, 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 doom. And it like triplets you in to the new feel. Doom, 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 ga, da, da, ga, da, boom, doom, doom, ga, da, da, ga, da, boom. Doom. And when I want to get back, it's after that backbeat again. Doom, da, do, do, ga, da, da, ga, da, boom, da, doom, do, ga, da, 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 ga, doom, doom, ga, da, 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 doom. That to me is the switching point. That's the where I pivot between these two feels. Because honestly, the first half, if we want to think about this first half, it kind of feels the same in both of them a little bit. I think there is a subtle difference because you do start feeling the triplets here. But either way, that at the end is really the important part where I start feeling the change difference. So let's listen to this in the song. So section 1, we are doing this top version, and section 2 we're doing this bottom version. So let me just play leading up to the transition here, and I'm just gonna sing. I'm gonna beatbox. So we're thinking the first way, and then we're getting into the second one. Here we go. Listen to the bass. I don't know, I can't sing the notes, but the bass implies, when you listen to the bass here, you're almost like, is this in 4? What's going on? Right, so what he's hitting in those notes, if we do this in blue, he's hitting doom, dunk, da, do. This is like a triplet pickup, right? So he's going, let's put a rest there. Dunk, doom, 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 boom, boom. It sounds like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But there's an extra note somewhere in here, right? Don't, but it's like close enough that we're approximating it. So listen to the groove that comes in at this part, and I'm really now emphasizing this triplet version of it, and you can feel it big time. So let me just play this transition and you can feel the difference. So when you hear that groove, it sounds like a 4/4 groove, but there's just like a little too much space between the first and second hi-hat. And he, that's not programmed, but he's actually playing that in real time. So it's probably even a little closer to 4/4 actually than like the grid would sort of mathematically be. I found this very interesting, and when I discovered there's 2 ways of feeling it, it started helping me develop more vocabulary, because when I was in one mode, I could use some vocabulary, and when I switched to the other mode, triplet mode, it brought out different ideas and different vocabulary. It was easier to play with the feel change, which is really interesting when you think about it. The patterns remaining the same. You're making an internal change, and you're able to play more vocabulary, like triplet vocabulary, because of that. So anyways, now what I want to do is walk you through the process that I took and the process that you can take when you're getting into any time signature, right? And this doesn't have to be something as weird as 13/16. It can be kind of whatever. So first, in a case like this, and as often the case, I'm thinking about groove freedom. How can I develop some kick drum freedom, some ghost notes, snare accents, and then move progressively further to the point where I'm like really improvising in a groove context? So step 1 is just find a groove that feels natural and is good. Just a starting place. Dive into the deep end and find one. So for me, with this pattern, it was... second step, so find a groove that's comfortable, and then you start exploring just like low-hanging fruit variety, like without changing the core groove. So for me, usually first step is like, what can my kick drum do, while my hands basically keep playing this melody? The first thing is like, okay, kick drum could line up with some of these other hi-hats I'm playing. And just to visualize this, what I'm looking at doing is basically like, you've got these targets, right? So the doot 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 doot. First, my kick drum is here, and it's here in the space. So then you start thinking like, okay, well, easy, low hanging. What if I put it here and here? Doom doom cat boom boom cat. What if I put it there, here and here? Doot doom cat boom boom cat, or here. Dunk, dunk, dukat, boom, boom, bukat, right? And then you might think, what about between these? You go don't, yeah, don't, catch, catch, like that. You could go, and then here you have don't. You're putting a hi hat here and here, right? So don't, dukat. You could go kick. Dunk, tipabukat, tikitipabon, tipabukat, tikitipabon, tipabukat, tikitipabon, tipabukat. Of course, you could do all of them so they match up. And then you heard me take this step just a second ago. You can say, okay, I'm not going to play a kick drum on one. So then you're looking like all the same options, right? So you go boom, boom, cat, boom, cat, one, doom, cat, 1, 3, cat, 1, doom, cat, doom, cat. Whatever combination. And now really I'm just focusing on this first half. And I'm exploring my options there. And on the back half, I'm just kind of letting whatever happens, happen. That's a way that I'll do this a lot. It's kind of, I call it the front half, back half approach. But then you might say, okay, I'm starting to develop some freedom on the front half. Let me now look at this back half and think like, what, does my kick drum have options here? Let's think about it. So as I mess around with this, I think, and there's no real, it's hard to pinpoint the logic behind this, but when I think about this back half, I'm less concerned about the kick drum. I'm more interested in like, what can my hands do? Because here's why. If I'm trying to figure out why I feel this way, you have this backbeat. That's not a kick drum. You could put it there, but it doesn't matter. It feels like this space after the backbeat can't have a kick drum a lot of the time. You can, but it takes away from the feeling of that upbeat backbeat. Like the space after it feels like it kind of needs to be there. So really you're looking at just these 4 notes. And it's like to move a kick drum through the grid here, like this is just like not going to sound cool and be just a huge pain. So what I'm tending to think here is, what can my hands do to fill in this space? What my kick drum tends to do is go duk do doom, doom da da boo ba duk do doom, doom, and my hands are playing right, left, right, doom 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 boo ga a little inverted double. That's what comes naturally, happens naturally when I figured out this groove. But what it could be, then you could start saying, okay, well, what can my hands do? They could go right, left. Doom 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 bugat doom 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 bugat boom ba doom bugat boom, or they could be singles, right left doom 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 bugat doom 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 bugat doom, right? And I feel like personally there's less to think about and experiment with on this back half, so I'm gonna call it there, right? You can keep going, but basically, with just the kick drum now and a couple hand things at the end, we've got some options. So we're thinking about the kick drum, what's kind of happening, and then we might think about like, okay, what about like, what could my ghost notes do? Actually, then we might think about the first half, that we got kind of like kick drum options. We might go back to the first half and say, what could my hands do differently, right? Because they could play some rudiments. They could fill in space here where they go. right? So we do kind of the same process. We won't write them all out, but we're basically thinking, what patterns can my hands play in the beginning here that sort of like low-hanging fruit, right? It's not go through every possible permutation of rights and lefts. It's like what patterns fit into the melody easily. Right? Don't work too hard. Like with a pattern like this, it's weird enough, and we're at an early enough stage that it's enough to just build some options that are really close to the melody and support the melody. Okay, so now we've got some groove options happening. And next, and we're not going to think about the triplet version of this because it's very similar, the approach. The next step you'd want to take in this process, the next step I took was, okay, now I've had this boom, boom, thing happening the whole time. And that's one of the things that's going to make this feel really boring, right? If you think about playing in 4/4, doom, ka, boom, ka. If you hit beat 1 and beat 3 every measure, that's just you're gonna run out of creative steam almost immediately. We never do that in 4/4, so we have to try to not do that here. So let me erase basically all this stuff. So we're back to our original pattern here. We're thinking about it. It's like in the original way we were thinking about it. So what I wanted to start thinking about is can I kind of displace this kick drum and backbeat? So I started to think like, right, obviously the kick drum is typically on 1, the backbeat is typically here. What would it sound like if I just moved them back? Literally like that's there and that's there. So now what I do is I get my hi-hat playing the melody and I just offset those. Listen to what that sounds like. Cool. So kind of, honestly, like that might as well be the groove. That could be the downbeat. That could be 1. So it doesn't feel that odd actually when I lock into it. So there's that option. But then you say, okay, what if I just kind of push it back again? What would that look like? Then we're talking about here. Actually, let me keep the green circles and we'll put blue circles. It could be here and here in the middle of this tu-tu-katu at the end. So ba ba dum tu 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 katu dum ba boom bo do tu tu katu. Now I'm looking for that third note. Right, so it sounds cool and disjointed, but you can see the next step here, right? So I've got kind of these 3 options that they move in pairs. Of course, don't have to move in pairs. I think I didn't do this in the video, but one thought I had is that it would be cool if I was just had it on then, I moved it over and I moved it over, right? But what we can also do, and like I started to do there in that last demo, is if we lock in that last backbeat, let's say do 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 ga, right there. Then we can play with the kick drums, kind of like we did the same process where we're like, okay, I could move my kick drum around to match different hi-hats or whatever. I could add some ghost notes. So then what you're doing is you've got these sort of like things that feel like a displaced backbeat, but not only have you sort of like implied you've displaced this groove, but you're also moving the kick drum around and it's just creating this like, holy moly, like the loop is still happening and it's like so relentless and it's a short loop. So you have this thing that keeps you tethered to some repetition and some familiarity. And then these stabs of drumming are just kind of happening everywhere. And it's kind of fun because when it's the downbeat and the backbeat, boom, ka, boom, ka, the things that are typically the anchors of a groove, and they keep kind of like freaking out and going different places, it gives it this kind of like super wonky, all upside down thing. So okay, so now we did like 3 placements for the kick drum and 3 placements Look at it this way. Three kick drum with 3 rhythms from the backbeat. But think of the backbeat could come first. Boom, 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 right? Like. So basically the process we've traced out here is find a groove that feels natural as a starting place. Explore low-hanging fruit variations, right? Different kick drum placements, adding ghost notes, an extra snare accent somewhere. And the third step there is exploring significant changes, right? And that part obviously goes pretty far, right? You can start, seeing, can I keep 16th notes here? Can I do all sorts of stuff? What do embellishments look like in that space? Whatever. We're going to call it there for the sake of time. But that's kind of the process. So now let's flip to, okay, now we're not just in flow mode. We're not just in groove mode. We're thinking about flowing over top of this, like playing the infinite drum fill, being in flow mode while we play with this crazy loop. Step one here is similarly to the groove stuff, is to find some kind of pattern that works, some kind of starting place using vocabulary that you already have. What I thought was crazy, the reason this was so hard for me, is that none of the vocabulary that I usually use worked off the bat. Like nothing could be out of the box and function in this time signature. Everything needed to be adapted or changed or developed anew, right? So if we play this for a second, let me find just a pattern that I can loop that is like, this would be like my go-to first thing that I figure out. Here we go. And so for me, that's the first thing I find where I'm like, this is, it sounds okay, and it's basically like using as much of my existing vocabulary as possible, and it matches the loop. Kind of, you got like right, left kick stuff in there. Here's what it looks like actually. I'm doing a 4, and then you need to do a 3, and a 2, and a 4. And these 4s are right, left kick. Right, left kick, 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 right, left. So then we could just kind of like, I'm adapting here. I'm going right, left, and right, left. These are adaptations of the right, left kick pattern. So I'm sort of this is the stutter and extend approach. I'm like removing notes basically. Okay, I found something that works. Now let me orchestrate my right hand. You might look at that 2 and go, that 2 could be 2 accents. That 3 could also be. Right, and then as you keep messing around with the pattern, basically, you'll start to find little pieces, right? Again, we're kind of looking in the beginning for low-hanging fruit. Like, I don't need to get too systematic and be able to do everything over this. I just need enough to get started. So, like, when I do that, when I try to find patterns that feel good to play and musical, with the kick drum, these are groups of 3. notice that the at the end there, got doo 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 doo. A paradiddle diddle works really well. Got boo boo da da paradiddle diddle. So I'm kind of keeping that in there, and I'm looking at, again, front half, back half approach. What can I do in the front half? That's a new pattern. Right there, I'm extending the diddles. I go paradiddle, and then keep the diddles going on the downbeat. Diddle diddle, and then do something else there. All right, so we're starting to get a little bit of vocabulary built up, and you kind of just slowly build from there. Find more adaptations. A lot of this starts to become more natural. Over time, especially when you're like 20 minutes into looping it. It always feels weird when you first start, I feel like, at least for me, this loop. But there we are. So now this is where the different feel, the alternate feel, the triplets really, for me, came in handy. Because then when I was in flow mode, I would switch into this alternate feel. And right, so and this would bring out different ideas in my playing. So again, here's what that looks like if we break it down. So instead of this 4-3-2-4 that we just had going, we have 4-3-3-3. Do 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 do. Boom da ba ba da ba do ba da doom boop ba 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 do ba da doom. And this started really just introducing a little bit of new vocabulary, because I could basically go boom boom 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 doom get to to get it good to ba boom. Just felt kind of different. You can see how I'm really exploring, like, what groups of 3 can I use? Doom doom. Or do get. So now I've a little bit like the front half, back half approach, but different. I'm like, to get this group of 4 in the front, and I'm kind of just like going, I don't really care what happens there, even if I just space. And then like, check it, 3, 3, 3. Let me see what I can come up with there. And once those start happening, filling in this 4 space is going to be fine, because it can even be an open space. Or I can just go ba 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 ba. Then of course you can find some patterns that really kind of fill the space a little bit more interestingly. The next step that I was trying to take was building 16th note triplet vocabulary. So getting kind of like fast stuff going on here. The reason this was interesting is because it doesn't technically work. It's a little hard to explain why it doesn't mathematically work, but if we give it a go here, if we're trying to do 16th note triplets here, basically each one of these needs to have 3 notes, right? But then we get here, there's not the same space. This space is not the same as this space. And actually only like 2 straight time notes fit here, right? And actually this this is like a straight time upbeat. This is why it doesn't work, right? So this would be, there's a note before and there's a note after if we were in triplets, but this needs to be a straight time upbeat. Here you can put 6 notes. It sounds really great. So you have the, And what I would do, basically like one of the reasons it doesn't work very well is that this upbeat, in order to fit it into the 16th note triplets, it helps to make it a swung upbeat. One, two, three, right? But you're fudging it. It's not actually there, right? It's just moving so fast that no one's going to notice. But if you make that a swung upbeat, then this space doesn't really make sense because this note is happening late. So like, what do you put here? If you're supposed to be able to put 3 notes here, but since this note is happening late, you have to like squish these 3 notes into an even smaller space. So when I try to play 16th note triplets through this, notice there's this little breath. Right, that breath, listen to it. I was disturbed by this little breath because it feels really it feels like a mistake. It feels like you haven't figured something out yet. So I was like, well, what do I do in that little breath? I can put 2 straight time notes. And that was one of my solutions, right? So trying to go, trying to orchestrate this around the kit a little bit. Or you can try to squeeze the 3 notes in. And they just move slightly faster. Again, it doesn't mathematically work. I'm fudging it, right? But who cares? That's why it's kind of fun. So one of the patterns that I definitely used, I think once in my actual performance of this, was this triplet, this really fast triplet, and then this 6 tuplet that we talked about immediately after. So you go da da da, and then you get 6 notes down the tom. I went kick, kick, right, left, right, left. So you get to go. And these get it on the little mini snare here, they're moving faster, and this just is what it is. Kind of fun. Anyways, so this was like the problem I was trying to overcome, which is kind of fun. And so I'm trying to come up with some basic vocabulary around this stuff. And another way to think about this, like earlier, again, deeply nerding here. Earlier we talked about how we're 13 notes, so we could think of this like, okay, it's like 4/4 with triplets, but we need to add 1 note somewhere. So we added it up front when we did 4/3/3/3. However, another thing we can do is think about this, right? Also 12 notes is 3/4, the time signature 3/4. So we go, this is like the final, and then we go do, 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 do. And then you have this like, okay, here's beat 1, here's beat 2, here's beat 3, 1 and 2 and There's just an extra note in here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. And the reason this was helpful to think of it this way was that then I could do like 6. That's what I was just showing you. That's why it makes sense, like 6-stroke roll stuff. Right? If I'm in 3/4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3. All my cool 6-stroke roll, Buddy Rich flow mode stuff works. What I need to do here, I can use that, I can channel that, but I just have to keep adding this 1 random 16th note, right? But that was an important tool, right? So coming up with stuff that was like 6-stroke roll. I could start to bring some of my existing vocabulary in, but again, you have to adapt it every like half a second as the measures pass. So kind of fun. Anyways, so starting to develop flow, and as you're probably noticing me do even in real time here, the sort of front half, back half thing keeps being useful, right? So one thing I would do is target the beginning or the end of this. I remember looking at the end of this, right? So I have to, I've got 6 notes to play there. I could be. So that's basically the process that I went through for developing this flow mode with this stuff. And again, if we want to extract the sort of approach that we're taking here, the steps that we've taken, it's like find something that works, that makes sense, find a way to divide the measure up, find some vocabulary, and then start looking at sort of pieces at a time. The best example of this, or the clearest, was when we had the triplet version and we said 4, 3, 3, 3. And we're thinking like groups of 3. What groups of 3 can I use here? Let me think of 5 different things that work, and then I'll start to be able to move between them. And what does start to happen eventually, you start to like sort of transcend the exact patterns that you've done, right? The goal is actually to have some freedom over this. And I was happy when I started to actually no longer refer to specific patterns. I would momentarily, but then there was also an ability to flow over this that started to develop over time. And I mean over weeks. You know, this doesn't happen right away. But now if I get this going now and kind of warm up into it, I'm able to flow a good bit, let's say just in 16th notes. The 16th note triplets, I have to rely on too many pre-canned things. But 16th notes feel kind of good at this point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if I do that a little bit, this track was hard to record because basically there's a drum solo in the front, then there's another drum solo halfway through, and then, you know, I'm trying to make them different and trying to elevate the energy and whatever. But if I try to really just explore on the toms for a sec, notice that you'll hear some of the stuff we talked about, but I'm trying the best I can to just sort of like think generally melodically now that this is so stuck in my head. And then this low section, what actually happened is in my mind, obviously I changed the orchestration a lot, moved down to some toms, some ride, kind of flowy stuff. But in my head, what I really am doing is switching to the triplet way of hearing this. And that helps me play sort of more jazzy sounding stuff over here on the ride because we've got a bunch of 3s going on. And then for the solo that happens after that, I switch back to the other feels so that I can use this sort of like 3, 4 plus a 16th note, 6-stroke roll stuff. And then it switches totally randomly to 11, 16 in the end, which we're not going to talk about at any great length, but it's a group of 6 and a group of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, don't do da, don't do ga, don't do da. Imagine playing a paradiddle. Paradiddle, diddle, it's the right hand, da 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 da, and then da 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 da, and then you just drop the last note of the paradiddle. Da 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 bum ba ba 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 bum ba ba, you know, and make a groove out of that. And just for fun, the same little 13/16 loop is actually happening underneath that. It never lines up again. It just sounds like muddy bass notes. But that's kind of a fun fact about this track. So that is the process. That's Shed Track from Hell. I call it Shed Track from Hell because I'm trying to anticipate people commenting like, this song sucks. This isn't good music. I'm like, it's not meant to be good music. We wrote this to be a YouTube video, a show-off YouTube video. So Shed Track from Hell, that's how it works. You can actually find the play-along on my website if you want to dive into this and give this a spin. It especially feels good. Honestly, it's like, yeah, shedding over it, whatever. But to play grooves over it actually feels really good once you lock them in. So if you want to do that, check it out. It's on my website. And that's it from me. Be sure to check out the videos from Meinl, the performance video. I assume you've seen it if you're here. If not, go check it out. This will all make a lot more sense. And also be sure to check out the 5-part masterclass I did on their YouTube channel called Demystifying Drum Set Improvisation. I'm really excited about that. They're like, it's 5-part, and they're like 40-minute lectures each, basically, with drumming, with specific examples, right? Demystifying improvisation, showing how it works at 5 levels of not quite complexity, but like 5 levels from sort of beginner to advanced and conceptual. I'm really proud of how that turned out and excited about it. It's for all levels, but again, I was really trying to capture this sort of like university level rigor that you would find at a college level course. So I hope that's a unique addition to the YouTube drum education sphere. And that's it. Hope you're having a great day. See you soon.